What's up, Dad Bod Nation? Dad Bod Steve. Got another great story for you guys today. A person who is from Denver, Colorado. She has been agreeing to meet with me for a few weeks now and tell her story. Everyone give it up for Holly Woods. Holly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. I'm excited to hear your story today. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, my name's Holly, and like you said, I'm from Denver, Colorado. I'm 40. I'll be 41 next month. And yeah, I have a lot of history and experience in this subject that I'd love to share and hopefully inspire and spread some hope to others.
That is awesome. And happy birthday next month, by the way.
Thank
And so I,
you.
I feel you. I just turned 43 back in September. So the 40s is where it all goes downhill for sure.
I agree.
Well, perfect. Go ahead and give us your history, where you grew up, what family life was like, and we'll start from there.
All right. I was born in Denver, Colorado, and so I grew up here. I did grow up with a very nice family, and my mom and my dad were together, but they ended up divorcing when I was probably 7 or 8. I don't really remember their divorce too much, but they had worked out to where they lived maybe 2 miles apart from each other. So we had a system set up to where I would live with my dad for 2 weeks, and then I'd go to my mom's house and live with my mom for 2 weeks. And they both lived in the same school system district. So I didn't have to change schools or anything like that. Uh, but I did end up learn how to manipulate people, rules, and things very quickly because I did have two different lives that were set up. I had two different rooms, and my parents, the divorce wasn't very nice, so they weren't in communication with each other, and they weren't in agreement with a lot. So if I did something at my mom's house and she wanted to punish me, my dad wouldn't carry the punishment over. He'd make the punishment continue when I went back to her house, and so it would be like a clean slate when I went to him. And very young, I learned that if I'm going to do anything that's against the rules, I need to do it the night before I went to the other parent's house. That way, by the time I got back in 2 weeks, either they wouldn't remember or they would see it pointless to punish me 2 weeks after the behavior. So, with that said, I learned how to do some pretty manipulative things, which I also was able to link up with some friends that probably had the same type of poor decision making. And so very young, I started to get into bad choices, bad company. I started drinking and smoking weed at 11 years old. The way I had started was actually hanging out with my brother's friends. I'm the youngest. I have two older brothers, and they're 4 and 5 years older than me. So I'd hang around with their friends. They were always into not so good things as well. And then everything that I learned from them, I would take back to all the neighborhood kids that were my age. And I just remember staying out late, drinking, and basically doing whatever I wanted. The way that my home was when I was at my dad's house. He worked nights. So I would very rarely see him. I'd be at school all day. By the time I came home from school, he'd already be gone at work. And as long as I was back in the house by the time he came home from work, then I could pretty much do whatever I want. My mom, when I was at her house, she had her own little addiction issues with alcohol, and she would work all day, but then she would like to go out to the bar and out with her friends. And so she wasn't very present in my life to, help with homework or make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to. And without me having a stable figure in the home ever, I wouldn't come home from school and do normal things like normal people. I would stay out all night. I'd go to friends' houses. I would do things that were very above my time. We have a public transportation system in Denver, the RTD, and I was taking the RTD from clear across the metro area at 11, 12 years old, like it was nothing. And I would go all the way to the other side of the city and get drunk with older people and manage my way back and not have any consequences, because as long as I was in bed, my parents weren't waking me up to check to see what I did that day. They did start to realize that I had issues when I was probably about 13. I would not go to school. They'd get the truancy phone calls. And they were trying to help me, but I think the only way that they knew how to help me was to discipline me. And at that point, I had been so manipulative and above the rules that by them trying to discipline me, it just made me rebel completely and go on my own way. And I started running away from home. The second they try to enforce discipline on me, I'd leave. And my both my parents remarried the same year in 2000. And when my mom remarried, she went to Jamaica for her honeymoon. And I was supposed to be staying with my dad, but my brother was not staying with my dad. He was staying at my mom's house. And I had gone over there and stolen my mom's car and was taking it to and from school and picking everybody up. And we were just driving around, and I was drinking and driving, and we were just going party to party, and it was just chaotic. But then 2 weeks later, when she gets back into town, I had to give the car back up, and I didn't get caught for it, but it started a lifestyle that I wasn't willing to give up at that point. So that's when I started going out and finding boyfriends that had cars, hanging out with a lot older people that had cars in their own apartments. And then I would never go back home. I'm just going to these apartments and doing who knows what. But they had I don't even know if it's still open, but it was this nightclub that had like underground raves that you didn't have to have an ID to get into. I started going to those when I was about 13 or 14 years old. And I would go in there and I'd have lots of ecstasy, lots of ketamine, lots of GHB, and I would just do drugs until I was blacked out unconscious. And that was almost a 2 to 3 time a week ordeal. And I had one friend I remember once who came with me. She was the one that actually introduced me to the whole club scene and where they were at and how we go and get the maps and everything. And her dad had found out what we were doing, and he came to one of the raves, and I was trying to hide her underneath some coats. And he saw me, and he knew that she was going to be right with me. And so he threw the coats and found her underneath there and grabbed her and ripped her out of that club and left me there by myself. And I was stranded there. And for a
He
moment,
didn't
I
take
was
you
like,
with him?
no, he did not take me too. He left
Oh,
me there.
wow.
And it just kind of like, I can't even describe the feeling that it had for me, because I just, for some part of me, I was happy that I didn't get in trouble, that I wasn't taken away from the party. But then another part of me was like, wow, my parents would never come all the way up in here and rip me out like that. Like, they don't care about me that much to get up in the middle of the night and come track me down and come into a club and find me in the club and then rip me out. And she wasn't allowed. That was my best friend ever, and she was not allowed to hang out with me anymore after that circumstance. But it kind of put me in a really big depression, because I had now lost my best friend. I wasn't allowed to go to her house. She wasn't able to come to mine. And I didn't have very many other friends. I knew guys or whatever from the clubs, but that was it. And so that's when I think my decision making got really bad, because I would just want to leave the house to go get high on anything with anyone that would have me. And I didn't have a best friend that was like, oh, we're doing this to have fun together. It was more, I'm doing it just because this is what I do now. Like, and that's when addiction really started to get its grip on me. Um, I One of the last memories that I have before I really went off a deep end, I was in a hotel with a guy that worked at the hotels. He wasn't in the hotel with me, but I had run away from home and was in the hotel room drinking and smoking weed. And the cops had come out and surrounded the place, and they were calling up to the room and saying that I needed to come out, that they knew I was in there. I needed to come out. And I was like, no, let's just run. Let's just run. And the guy's like, dude, don't run. Like, you have to come out here. And I was so mad that he had told them that I was in there. And I went out there, and my mom was there. And she was like, how did you get this room? And I was like, what are you talking about? I got the room. Like, I didn't steal. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. Like, it was just given to me. I can't remember what I had told her, but she slapped me so incredibly hard in front of all of the police officers. And I looked at the police and I was like, she just abused me. And the cop looked at me and he said, if you were my daughter, I would be doing way worse. And so at that point, I just felt very unloved and unwanted. And like I was just a burden, like, because I really didn't do anything wrong to get the room. Like I now see what an unsafe and dangerous situation I put myself in. But at that time, I didn't understand what was wrong with the whole situation besides the fact that I wasn't of age to get my own motel room. Um, After that, I ended up going back to my mom's house, and very shortly later, at one of the guys' houses that I had known, I was staying over there, and I had decided that I'm going to move to California. And I was like 14 years old, and I linked up with some guys that had were born and raised in California, and I said, "Oh, do you have friends out there somewhere where we can stay?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And I did go and do some things that were very bad, robbing people, places, and things. And I ended up coming up with the money to get a ticket on the Greyhound bus for three of us to go to California. And we took the Greyhound out there. It took like 3 days, and we went to South Central LA to start. And I was trying to get cigarettes and beer from the liquor store. And everybody that I kept offering money to go in there and buy it for me just kept robbing me for the money and taking off. And so finally, the last guy that tried to rob me, I ended up catching up to him and threatening him and trying to hit him. And he basically snatched me up and let me know that he was going to kill me and that this was not the right place for me. I had no business out there. I needed to go back to the Greyhound station. If he saw me out of the Greyhound station, he would go ahead and kill me. Like, I needed to get out of his city. I needed to stop doing whatever I was doing. This isn't Colorado. He doesn't know what I think I'm doing, but this was not a place for me.
And how long had you
I
been out there by the time that this happened?
like an hour. It was not
Oh,
long
that's
at all.
it?
It was
Wow.
literally across the street from the Greyhound station. So I had gotten off the Greyhound bus and started walking up and down the street that was right there and walked to the first liquor store and was sitting out there. It was like the third guy that I had confronted. And I thought that he would want the extra money. He had a shopping cart and everything. And he said he had weed but he was trying to rob me, and he took my money and then wasn't trying to give me any weed or any cigarettes or beer. And so I started to get lippy and threatening to hit him and was threatening to take his card away from him and just being a little, just being a hoodlum like I knew how. And he wasn't having it. He was not. And my friends stepped up and they were like, "Don't hit her, don't hit her, don't hit her. We'll leave, we'll leave. It's fine. Let's just go." So we went back to the Greyhound station and we ended up boarding another Greyhound and taking it up to Oakland. And up in Oakland, that's where off the BART station was where the friend that was with me, he had friends that he said would take us in. And we ended up taking the BART down to, I want to say Fremont, and stayed with his friend, this young girl that he went to school with. Well, her parents sold cocaine out of the house. And so they let us stay in their little sunroom in the back room. And that's when I started doing cocaine pretty seriously, pretty heavily. I just remember the first time doing it, I was so numb. I started piercing my belly button with a safety pin, just sitting there, couldn't feel anything. I was piercing my face and just walking around with safety pins just stuck in my whole body. Like, I can't feel anything. This is great. And I want to say that we stayed there for a while, a month or two, until the guy that had brought us over there, I think he ended up stealing the drug dealer's credit cards and was going out and trying to buy stuff with this guy's credit cards. And this guy got pissed and was like, "All of you get out of my house. Like, I'm not going to call the cops. I'm not going to have you arrested, but you're getting out and you're getting out now." And so then there we are, stranded in the streets in California. Don't know what to do. Don't know where to go. And in California, in Colorado at this point, they did not sell liquor in the grocery stores. They do now. But in California, they did sell liquor in the grocery stores. And that was something that was new to me. Like, now, in order to get alcohol, all I have to do is walk into a grocery store, grab it off the shelf, and run out. So after we had got kicked out of the house, that's what I did. And I did that probably 3 or 4 times that day. At that point, I was also really into taking Coricidin and cold and cough pills. And it's like boxes of cold medicine. Instead of drinking a whole bottle of Robitussin, I would take a box, but I wouldn't just take one box. I would take like 3 or 5, and to the extreme where it was probably should have killed me a few different times. Um, and the last night of my freedom in California, I want to say we didn't make it more than 2 or 3 days after we had been kicked out of that house. And we were just walking around in a drunken slumber, just doing whatever. And I took a whole bunch of boxes of the Coricidin and I took a bottle of liquor from the store and I drank it and took the boxes and I was blacking out and I really don't remember what we were doing. All I know is that we were trying to find a car that we could steal so that we could drive to who knows where or sleep or something. And the cops had ended up stopping us and it was raining outside and the rain was so heavy to me I couldn't even stand up. And the cops kept asking me what I was on, what was going on. And I couldn't answer. I couldn't talk. I couldn't say anything. They kept asking me for my address and I kept giving them my address in Colorado. And they were like, are you lost? Like, you're in California. No, that's my address. And they ended up taking me to a hospital to try to pump my stomach or give me this charcoal drink. And I was handcuffed to the bed and they ended up getting a hold of my mom and calling my mom. And I was talking to my mom on the phone and she was telling me, just drink the charcoal. And I was like, I'm not drinking it. And I was refusing to drink it, refusing. After about, I don't know, 24 hours, maybe less, I was medically cleared to go to jail. And so I was taken to Alameda County Jail as my first jail experience. And they didn't have like a juvenile jail. It was the county jail. And so they kept me in the juvenile unit in the county jail.
And
And
are you still 14 at this time?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And so I'm in the county jail and they had me on a suicide watch because I had so many pills in my system. They figured I was trying to kill myself when that wasn't the case. And I had clearly said that wasn't the case. I did that on purpose. I wasn't doing that to die. I was doing that to get high. And I want to say I stayed in the county jail for about 3 days. I was the last one to leave. I know the two guys that I went to California with, they were there with me. And they were in the same block, the same little juvenile section as me. And I could see them, but I could see when they left. And from what they told me later on, they left and came back home to Colorado. My mom said that she didn't want me back. Like, I went all the way to California. I can stay in California now. So when I was released from Alameda County Jail, I had nowhere to go. And so they put me into a foster home at that point. And it was with a couple that they were Black. And so they had a different type of culture that I wasn't used to. And they had a different disciplinary consequences, things that I just was not used to at all. And that was not how I was raised. And it was not what I was used to. And I wasn't trying to learn it. And I didn't want to be there at all. And they had nailed their windows shut so that I couldn't sneak out and go get cigarettes and smoke them. And so I had threatened to just burn the whole house down. If we're not going to let me go outside, well, how are we going to keep me in if there's no walls? And at that point, that's when they had called my mom and was like, you have to take her back. Like, we are not keeping her. We don't get paid enough for this, or whatever they said. And so my mom had spoke to me and she said, are you going to behave? And I cried, oh, absolutely. Yes. Please just take me back. Take me back. She said, okay, you can come back. And at this point, and I think it's still to this day, if you are a runaway in the United States, and you're a minor, Greyhound will send you back home for free. So we called Greyhound and they gave me a free bus ticket to get back to Colorado. So the police escorted me to the Greyhound station. I got my Greyhound ticket and they told me, do not get off until you get to Colorado and do not come back to California until you're the age of 18. You are kicked out of the state. Okay, fair enough. And then all juvenile charges that whatever I had accrued to go to jail in the first place, they were dismissed. I come back to Colorado, took like 3 more days. I come back the very first night back in Colorado. My mom brought me home. And I just remember it was just so awkward because I had been gone for about, I want to say 2 or 3 months at this point in time. And they didn't ask me what I was doing. They didn't ask me, who I was with. It's like they didn't care. Her and my stepdad they made dinner and then they went into the basement and they ate by themselves. And I was just left there to sit by myself and eat. And my thoughts were just like eating away at me, my shame. I wanted to get high on top of that. I'd been on a bus for 3 days and I hadn't smoked anything, drank anything, done anything. And so I I wanted to go back to where it was comfortable, because that's the one thing I've learned about sobriety is it's so uncomfortable at first. You have to learn how to make it comfortable. At first, it's going to be really hard and really uncomfortable. And so I called the guys that I went to California with, and I asked them, can you come pick me up? You guys are back in Colorado? And they said, yeah, we're back. And I said, well, come get me. And he said, all right, you're back. You were the last one. We were just waiting on this. I'll be right there to get you. And so one of them comes and he gets me and he picks me up, and he's driving a car, and I don't know whose car it is. He doesn't have a car. If he had a car, we would have drove to California. But it's a stick shift car, and he didn't even know how to drive a stick shift, and he kept stalling it out. And I didn't have any weed or anything like that, but we stopped at somebody's house and they gave me like a bowl of stems and seeds, and I was just eating the stems until we could find more weed or something like that, and I had it in my pocket. And he stalled the car out in front of the cops, and the cops pulled us over. And that was my very first night back in town, and they pulled us all out. They searched my pockets. I had the stems and seeds in my pocket, and so they arrested me and took me to jail for juvenile and possession of marijuana. And they take us down to the police station. They call our parents to let them know. And when my mom answered the phone, I gave my mom's number, and I heard them call her, and it was on speakerphone, and I heard her answer the phone. And they said, oh, this is the Northglenn Police Department. We have your daughter with us. And my mom said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a daughter. And she hung up the phone. And the cops looked at me and they were giving me a hard time. Like, that was not your phone number. What is your real phone number? I said, that was my phone number. That was my mother. Like, I guess that means I'm disowned. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what. The guy that had picked me up, the car was stolen. He had stole it from one of our other friends' dad. The guy didn't want to press charges. So the guy that was driving the car, he got picked up by his grandma and was able to go home. Me, I had to wait to get picked up by a parent, and none of my parents were willing to come. And so I was then transported to the crisis intervention center that we have out here. And I stayed the night out there, and they were trying to figure out where they were going to place me because they couldn't get a hold of any parent. So they decided they were going to put me in a group home. And the social worker had asked me when got me in the car, she said, I just wonder, are you going to run when you get to this group home? And I said, we're not even going to make it to the group home before I run. I'm going to run the second I get onto a major bus line and I can get out of this car. That's when I'm going. And she just pulled over right there and said, then don't waste my gas. I don't get paid enough for this. If you're going to just run, just get out now and go. And I was like, okay, fine. So I got out and I walked to the courthouse and I called the same guy, said, can you come pick me up? And he had somebody come pick me up. And I just remember I'd been out all night sitting in jail cells, holding tanks. So I wanted to go home and I wanted to change and I wanted to eat and I wanted to get my stuff right. So I had gone to my house and my mom was at work. And at this point, like, me and my dad and my stepmom have already severed ties. I lied to my dad so much in so many ways. Like, I wasn't welcome at my dad's house. So that's why I had not been calling my dad at this point in my life, because me and him were not on speaking terms, just because the amount of lying, like when I took my mom's car and then I was never there while she was in Jamaica, and just the lies and the trouble that I had caused, I wasn't welcome back to his house when she came back into town. And that was just another reason that I went to California. But I had gone back to my mom's house to change into my clothes and whatnot, and she wasn't home. So I had them drop me off and told them, come back and get me before my mom gets home from work. And I ended up falling asleep. And then I woke up to 3 police officers around my bed and my mom talking about arresting me for stealing her car 6 months beforehand. And I was like, you can't. She has her car. Her car's in the garage. Like, no, you can't. And from basically later on, what my mom had told me what had happened is that she saw me asleep in bed when she came home from work, and she called the police and she said, my daughter's here. You need to take her. Like, she escaped from your guys' custody. And the police had said, no, she lives with you. She's going to stay with you. We've been trying to get a hold of you to come pick her up this whole time. And my mom had told them she's out of control. I don't want to be responsible for her behavior. She's going to end up hurting somebody or killing somebody. And and I can't stop her. And I don't want to be legally responsible for her mistakes. And that's one thing that my mom would distill into my head very heavily, was that as a minor, she was the one responsible legally for everything that I was doing, and she financially, and she couldn't do it anymore. And I just didn't care. I just only cared about myself. And I did steal her car and wreck it, and I did hide it from her, and I did get into fights where there was hospital bills that needed to be paid, and then all sorts of other things. And I just didn't think about those things. And when she said that she told the police that she couldn't take care of me, they said that they couldn't take me away. Like, you couldn't just give me up for adoption at this point at 14 years old. Like they can take me to jail if there's criminal charges. And so that's when my mom had decided that she was going to press charges on me for stealing her vehicle and put me into jail. And when it first happened, I hated her for it. And for many decades I did. It just blew my mind on how you can put a felony on your 14-year-old child and make them go into the Department of Youth Corrections. But it probably saved my life now that I'm older and I think about it. So at that point, I did go into the Department of Youth Corrections, and I did get a 0 to 2 sentence. And I stayed at our juvenile detention center for probably 6 or 7 months. And I was a little hellion there. I got into all the trouble that I possibly could, and then got sent to a group home. And I was to live in the group home for 2 years. And it was an all girls home. And that first experience was my first experience with sobriety. But that's when I was introduced to NA meetings, AA meetings, therapy, and the idea of how you need to literally change everything. But then on top of it, like, you have to want it. Like, you have to find things that you like to do. Otherwise, it's not going to stick, because nobody can make you do this life. Like, the sobriety has to be a choice that you make.
Yeah.
And at that point, I want to say I was 14, 15 years old. I didn't have that choice. I still wanted to be bad. My mom would pick me up for passes, and I'd, blackmail her into giving me cigarettes. I'd steal her cigarettes, and then I'd hide them in my pants and sneak them back into the facility. And she knew what I was doing, but she couldn't stop me, and she knew she couldn't stop me. And my nephew was born while I was there. And I remember I tried to run away from the facility to go see my nephew be born. And one of the counselors followed me out and was like, honey, you're going to get arrested before you watch your nephew be born. Like, you're court ordered to be here. You're not allowed to leave and go do this. Like, I understand. And I'm like, well, they said that I could go if my family comes. And she's like, yeah, if your family comes and if your family wants to be responsible for watching you. And I said, well, they're not coming. And she said, because they don't want to be responsible for watching you. They want to put the attention on your nephew. And I was so mad about that. But now I see how selfish that was of me, that I couldn't be a responsible aunt to be where nobody has to watch me. I'm actually an asset to this family, not a liability. But that was one of the reasons that I had missed his birth, was because I was a liability. They didn't know if I was going to rob them blind, or if I was going to steal drugs, or if I was going to be getting drunk in the parking lot. Like, those were things that you had to constantly watch me do and try to shut it down. Otherwise, you're going to be responsible for my behavior. And that was something I couldn't, the consequences, I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand my decisions, how the consequences affected others. And I didn't care. Like, anytime that they told me that my behaviors were affecting them, I refused to admit it. I refused to see it. I would say, oh, you guys are just crazy. You're just scared. You're tripping. You're scared. That's not going to happen. That's not real. You're just making it up. But there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I didn't see as a juvenile. When I ended up getting out and going on a non-res, and so I had my therapist coming to the house, and I moved, and they had told me when I got out, they said, because my dad was coming to visit me as well and doing family therapy while I was in the group home. But they told me, they were like, yeah, your days of having 2 houses are non-existent. You will no longer be doing that. You need to pick who are you going to live with? And even though my relationship with my mom had more issues than my relationship with my dad, I still chose my relationship with my mom. And honestly, I really don't even know why. I think it was I I wasn't close to my stepmom as I was to my stepdad. Like my stepmom never once came to therapy. My stepdad was several times the only one in family therapy to work things out. She held a big grudge against me and the things that I did, and I felt like she did not want me there. And so even though my relationship with my dad was pretty solid, my relationship with her made me uncomfortable and it made me want to run away more. So I chose to go with my mom basically because of my stepdad. And even though me and my mom argued a lot, my stepdad was always one that I could go to be the in between. And he would always be the calm and cool collective one and be like, I get it. I know why you feel like this. I know she's drinking, but that doesn't mean that you get to drink too. That doesn't mean that that's how that's going to work. Look, I won't drink with you. And he would make that promise a lot and he would honor it. So he turned into my buddy. Um, and then 16 comes along and I got a car and I got back into high school, a public school. And I started to get back on track, I feel like, and was sober and was doing the right thing. And then I honestly don't know how it really happened, but I tried meth and it just like came across. And I don't know if it was just like a one night thing. I think I just linked up with a friend. I know I had a friend whose mom did meth and I had gone over to her house and her mom was giving her meth. And so she was like, "You ever tried this before?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Well, let's try it. Let me show you how it's done." And so yeah, that is how. And so then I never had to like go out and look for meth. She would get it from her mom. So I'd just go over there. And it didn't take long before my mom was like, you gotta go. You can't, you're doing something. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not here during the days. You're not going to school. You're not being a part of this family. You're just being a little basement monster. And I can't have that. You gotta go. And when she kicked me out, I was very mad because at this point I'm 16 years old and I'm back on the streets and I didn't want to. And I had a car and I had a job. I was working at Dairy Queen and I just didn't think that it was right because then when I left, she took my car keys and wouldn't let me take my car with me because I didn't have a driver's license. I was working to get that back, or to get it because since I had a stolen vehicle on my record, there was all sorts of hoops I had to overcome and the possession of marijuana. Like I had to have my license reinstated. I had to have an SR22. I had to do all of these things just to get my permit. And my mom was like, "No, you're not doing that on my car. Like you can get your own car if you want to drive." And so I had done that and got my own car and was trying to do the 6 months of my permit or whatever the requirements were before I got my license. And even then, I think I was ready to get my license, but my parents had to sign for it. And my mom was like, "Absolutely not. I think you're on drugs. I'm not signing for your license. And as a matter of fact, I'm kicking you out and I'm keeping the car here." So I remember sitting there and doing meth with everybody in the room and coming up, devising this giant plan on how we're going to steal my own car because it's my car and I earned it and I want it. And if I don't have a driver's license, that's not on me, that's on them. And we had gone over to the house and I had broken into the house to get the keys. And then I said to myself, my dad pays child support for me and he pays it to my mom and I'm not living here. So that money is my money. So I'm now going to look through the drawers and any money that I find, I'm taking it because that's money that my dad has paid for me to have be taken care of. And I had fought with my mother several times about her accepting child support while I'm not living in the house. And she would always say, the child support goes to provide a safe and stable home for me. If I don't want to follow the rules to live in a safe and stable home, I give that money up. That doesn't mean that I get to take the money and go to a drug den and spend it on whatever I want. That means if I want to be taken care of, I need to follow the rules to be taken care of. I went back and forth with her on that, and I wouldn't admit that I was on drugs, and that was probably the biggest problem because nobody can help you if you're going to lie about what's going on. The longer I said, I'm fine and the problem is you, not me, she had nowhere to go and no way to put an ultimatum on me like, okay, well, I'll let you home if you go to classes or if you get help or if you take drug tests. Like she had no room because I kept saying I'm not doing anything. And it would just be too much work to catch me lying at this point. So I'm in her house. I get my car keys. I'm looking to try to find money. And I ended up finding a 357 Magnum revolver pistol. And it was my stepdad's. And I said, well, that's not money, but that will help. That will get me what I need in my life. So I had taken the firearm and taken it to the streets and decided I was going to teach myself how to shoot it. And that probably should have killed me as well, playing with that gun. I did do bad things with it. I didn't kill anybody, but I did end up getting it taken from me. And when I tried to rob an older guy, he ended up robbing me of the gun. And then my parents called me and I was in a motel room and they said, where's the gun? Where is the gun? We need a story. That gun is registered to your stepdad. We need a story to tell the police on who stole it, who has it, where is it at? And my mom was very stern with me and she was like, you don't understand. If somebody dies, your stepdad is going to jail. We need that gun back. And I told him I don't have the gun. We're not getting the gun back. Some guy has it. I don't have it. Some guy has it. I don't know where he is. I don't know how to get it back. It's not coming back. And I told them I sold it to him. I didn't tell them that it was taken from me because I didn't want them to worry or know that I had been doing things that I wasn't supposed to be doing with it. But they said, well, come over to the house. Let's have some dinner and let's sit and talk about this and come up with what we're going to tell the police. Because we have to tell the police something. And I remember telling my friend in the hotel room, I was like, I don't want to go back there. I can't trust my parents. Like, I can't go there and tell them what happened. What am I going to tell them? My friend's like, you need to go. That's your parents. It's your family. If anybody's going to have your back, it's going to be them. You have to go. And so the next day I ended up going. And I went into the house and I was so hungry. So I started making myself some oatmeal. And my stepdad never came down into the kitchen to talk to me. And it was his gun. And then my mom just sat there at the kitchen table and was just crying and like not talking to me about nothing. And then all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I saw a police car going in front of the house. And I was like, oh, no. And so I went to go run out the back door and there's cops in the backyard. So then I tried to run out the garage. There's cops in the garage. They had me surrounded. And so they pulled me back into the kitchen. They're ripping my piercings out of me that my mom didn't even know that I had. And they're checking me and taking everything. And they want to search my car. And because I had my car there and I'm like, nope, I don't give you permission. I don't give you consent. And my mom's like, you're not 18. It's my car. Like you don't own any property. I own property. Yes, you can search the car. And they searched the car and they found bullets in the car from the gun. I don't think they were spent shells. I think they were just bullets, but honestly, I don't remember. And so based off of that, that was their evidence that they needed to arrest me for previous offender in possession of a firearm. And so I went back into the Department of Youth Corrections and was committed again. And this time was not nicer. It was rougher. I went to a maximum security facility. Both the facilities I was in are now closed down to this day for child abuse. The second facility I was in, I remember the first day I was there, they had my mom bring clothes and whatnot, and they had a piece of paper for my mom to sign that gave them permission to put hands on me and physically punish me. And I just remember my mom signing it. And I was like, Mom, you're going to just let somebody beat me up? Like grown ass people? And she said, yeah, I'm not going to fight you. Like, don't fight them and they won't fight you. And I'm not so sure that was how that worked out. There was a few different times that they put their hands on me and took me into isolation rooms and things that just that's not how you correct somebody, but that was what I was sentenced to. And I think that experience of my life taught me how to become violent as a form of self-defense and how to be loud and loud and aggressive as a way of self-defense and a protection. And that's a very pointless skill to have as an adult. Like, it does nothing but get me into trouble. I have to completely, constantly, and daily unlearn those behaviors that I had learned that were instilled to me from that place. I was there for probably, I want to say, a year and a half. And I remember when I turned 18, I was let go from the Department of Youth Corrections. And immediately, like, I know one time I had taken a pass from Excelsior to my house, and my mom still had my little meth kit hanging out in my garage. And I was like, why are you saving this? And she was like, what am I supposed to do with it? I don't know. And so I had to destroy it and get rid of it. And I remember that was the hardest thing for me to do. But I never wanted to go back into the trouble that I had put myself in. And so I had told myself, never again am I going to do drugs. Never again. Like, I haven't talked to my friends that were giving it to me. I'm not going to go back to those same acquaintances. Like, and now I'm about to be 18, so I don't even get to go back to these juvenile places. Like, I'm going to prison if I keep up these behaviors. So I'm done all the way. So I had destroyed it. I had gotten out. One of the terms of getting out of Excelsior was that I needed to either graduate high school or get my GED. And at that point, I was supposed to be a senior in high school, but I only had enough credits to be a freshman. So I opted for the GED. And I had them, the second that was on the board, I had them pre-test me, and I aced it. I was top of the class. I nailed all of those tests, and I was so proud of myself and they gave me a special pass to go to the community college out here and go test for my GED. And it took 2 days. And in 2 days, I took all the tests and I aced every single one of them. My scores were astronomical. I was so proud. And so when I had gone back into Excelsior, they had said that they've never seen anybody test at my level of intelligence that I had completed. And they wanted to offer me a full ride scholarship to go to college. And they wanted to,
That is awesome. Congratulations
yes,
on that.
thank you.
That's a huge feat. Yeah, that's awesome to
Yes,
hear.
it was really nice. And it was a nice couple of Lawtons. And they had come in and they decided they were going to pay for my college. So I got out, and I wasn't quite 18. I was almost 18, but I had enrolled in college. I got my GED, and now I was in college for nursing, and it was fully paid for by the Lawtons. And at this time, my stepdad was a director of nursing at a nursing home. So he took me on, got me a job with him full time. So I was working in the nursing home during the day, going to college at night to become a nurse. And I got my CNA license, and so I was working as a nurse's aide. I became his staffing coordinator. I was doing central supply for him. And I really had a bright future to look up to. And I was on the dean's list in college. I was getting 4.0s every single semester. I was doing awesome. And then I had met a boy, and he didn't do anything with his life. He was 10 years older than me. And I think he got his GED, but he didn't have any college degrees. He didn't have a job. He didn't have a house. He lived at home with his grandma. He was married but separated. I think the only reason he didn't get divorced was because he didn't have any money to pay for it and didn't really care. And I just thought that he was the best. I just thought that he was a great guy. He had been to prison. He was a gang member. And I'm not so sure what I saw in him, but I thought that this was going to be my better half. This was who's going to protect me. This is who's going to make sure that nothing bad ever happens. And he's not going to flinch when I tell him stories about things that have happened to me in my juvenile years. Like, he understands. He's lived it too. So I felt very comfortable with him, but he was definitely an addict. And the other thing is, he was 10 years older, like I said, so he could buy me alcohol, and he did buy me alcohol. And so alcoholism was getting out of control. I was drinking in class. Like I was going to college at this point and I was drinking while I'm sitting in English class. And so there, my grades started going down and I started losing the dean's list. And then he's on drugs. And so he's having weird people. I moved out. I got my own apartment. I moved him in with me. And now he's having weird people come in and out of my apartment while I'm trying to go to work and go to school. I had a nice Jeep. I bought myself a Jeep Grand Cherokee and I'd always let him borrow my Jeep and he's getting into accidents with it. Ultimately, he ended up taking the Jeep when I was drunk and passed out and wrapping it around a telephone pole and going to jail. And I lost my Jeep that way. And it's just crazy how my parents were the ones to save me every single time I made those bad decisions. And the whole step of the way, they kept telling me, he's not right for you. I know you love him, but this is not good for you. Like you're losing it. And my stepdad would pull me into his office. Oh, he would threaten to beat this dude up. And I'm just like, well, why do you not want me loved? I just felt like they just wanted me by myself and miserable. But now I see like, oh, I was going down such a bad path. And I it's like a spiral. And once you get stuck in it, it just sucks you in. And I ended up doing drugs with him. Ended up doing meth with him. And then I decided we're going to quit doing the meth. We're going to relocate. I'm going to use all the skills that I know. I'm going to take this guy and we're going to move clear across town. We're going to change all of our friends up. We're new places, new people, new things. And we're going to switch it all up. And the only thing that did was switch the habits up. Instead of doing meth, now he's doing cocaine, smoking crack while I'm at work. And one of the guys that I had known, that had a lot of the crack ended up murdered. And I had his car and I actually had his daughter staying at my house while he went to go do a deal. And he was shot and thrown in the trunk of his own car, and they set it on fire. And then all of the police showed up to my house and I was suspected of having something to do with it. And I had nothing to do with it at all. But at that point, I did know where all of his drugs were, and I did now know that he was dead. And so I went and got a hold of all of his drugs before anybody else could, so that they wouldn't get seized. So at this point, I had come up with more cocaine than I knew what to do with, and I didn't have anybody to sell it to. And at this same exact time, I had ended up pregnant by this guy. And it only took a matter of a couple of months before me sitting on this cocaine before I ended up started doing it while I was pregnant. And I didn't let anybody know. That was my little secret. And I did give birth to my son, and he was full term, but he weighed 3 pounds and 2 ounces, and he was heavily addicted to cocaine, and so was I. And my whole family was just aghast. Because they did not see it coming. They thought that I was doing okay. They thought that I had stopped all of this. They thought I had put it all behind me. And that's when they were like, that's it. You're not seeing this dude anymore. And I'm like, what? That's my baby's dad. Like, you can't do that. Like, I'm 21 years old. You can't do that. And so the the child welfare department could definitely put those terms and conditions on me, though. And that was one of the terms. Like, I needed to get help and get myself into rehab, or I was going to lose my son. And those were my choices. And my son's dad did not want to get clean at that point. He ended up catching a charge that was 3 counts of aggravated armed robbery. And so he was facing 36 to 92 years in prison. And I had bonded him out on a $200,000 bond. And at that point, he kept saying, I'm not going to jail sober. Like, if they're going to put me in jail, I'm going to make every moment out here count. And I would cry to him and I'd be like, I'm pregnant. Like, you can't bring this around me. You can't do this. And he's like, nobody will know. Like, you just do a little bit so that, you don't come off of it hard. It was just all crazy thinking. And then after my son was born, I was like, now is the time. Like, you need to get sober now or I have to leave you. And he did not want to get sober. And so I had left him. And 2 months later, after my son was born, he was given 39 years in prison, to where he sits to this day. Um, so he never got to spend a night with my son. He never got to change a diaper. He never got to rock him to sleep. He had one visitation one time, and that was all that they gave him. And I did take him to see him when he was in prison a handful of times, but I ended up putting myself into intensive drug court and going to rehab classes 4 or 5 times a week. And I would go to court every week, and I would meet with the judge and update them about my mental health, my status. And my stepdad ended up taking me back into work for him. And so I ended up getting my own apartment back. I ended up re-enrolling in school and got my scholarship back and started doing that. And so now I'm a single mom with my own place, my own job, my own car, back in college. Everything's going great again. So I thought, I'm like, all right, now there's no boy in the way that's going to come mess this up. Now I got this. Back on track. And then my apartment I ended up getting full rights to my son. I got social services out of my life. And the sad thing is I wasn't sober when I had done all of that. I was still drinking, but that's all I was doing. And I was drinking to where I say it was very controlled. Like I knew when I could drink and when I couldn't drink. I knew when they were going to test me. Like I know that they're not going to talk to me until Monday after Thursday. So I could drink Thursday night. And as long as I don't drink any other day, I'll get away with it. And then I was binge drinking. And there were a few times that I got caught and got in trouble, and they just were kind of like pretty lenient with me. They're like, well, you're doing so much. You just have so much pressure. I understand. But like, you need to have better coping skills. You need to talk to people when you're feeling this way. You need to find other things that make you happy. And I was just like, no, I just need to not be so sloppy and get a hold of this. And then the first crisis that came along in my life, it just threw all of that out of the window. My apartment ended up catching bed bugs. And at that point, now I lost my apartment. Once I lost my apartment, that's when my drinking was just like, I'm not even going to try to control it anymore. I got social services out of my back. Now I don't have my own place to live. Like I'm stressed. So I would say that I'm going to the bar for whatever reason. And so I was slacking on my school again. School was getting harder. And I ended up going Christmas shopping. I know my car broke down. I bought a new car and the car broke down. And so I was borrowing my stepdad's and my mom's car. And I was so stressed. And I said, can you watch the baby while I go grocery or Christmas shopping? And they said, yeah, sure. And I left in their car, went Christmas shopping. I spent thousands of dollars, filled up the whole back of my car for my goddaughter, my son, my nieces and nephews, and everything is just full in the car. And then I stop at the bar. And my son's dad's brother was at the bar. And me and him end up getting into an argument over my son's dad. And I got way too drunk and decided I need to leave because we're arguing. I go out to the car and I could not drive. I was throwing up. I was way too drunk. So I didn't want to fall asleep in the driver's seat because I've heard that you can get a DUI by sleeping in the driver's seat when you're drunk. So I went to the passenger seat and fell asleep in the passenger seat. And I didn't have the keys in the ignition, but I had the keys laying out in plain view. And I didn't lock the doors when I had fallen asleep. I woke up, I don't know, hours later, an hour later, I don't know. I woke up to my son's uncle basically driving the car, and he had smashed it into a parked car right in front of a police officer. I woke up to my head hitting the windshield and looking behind me, and the cops were behind me. At this point, he's screaming, you have to tell him that you did it. I can't go back to prison. If I go back to prison, they're going to kill me. Like, you can't let our family know that you sent 2 of us to prison. Like, you got to take this. You got to take this. And I'm drunk with a head injury. And I'm like, I'm not taking anything. Like, I'm not going to tell on you, but you need to be a man and get out and tell him what you did. He jumps into the back seat and he's refusing to get out of the car. He's not doing it. He's not having it. And so I'm like, all right, you leave me no choice. And so I jumped into the driver's seat and I went on a high speed chase from the police officers in my own car, drunk. And it ended very badly. They ended up wrecking into me, and I ended up running a police officer over when I was drunk. And I broke his legs. And I was then arrested. He had gotten away. So I was the only one that went down for it. And they got me for the original charge was attempted murder on a police officer.
How did he get
And
away though? If he was in the back seat and refused to leave the car while you were driving, did he just take off when they finally got the car done, or what? Like
yeah,
what
so
happened there?
after I ended up, well, the way that it had happened was it was because it was a high speed chase and they had ran into my car and they knocked out all the windows and they were trying to get me out of the car. And that's when I reversed and accidentally ran over the police officer. After that had happened, I thought they were going to chase me down and kill me, shoot at me. They didn't. They rendered aid to the police officer while I continued to drive. And then immediately when I got down the block and around the corner, he jumped out of the car and was like, oh, you're on your own. And then 2 blocks later, I jumped out of the car and they just went to the car where the car was and found me in the streets. So, because they had locked down the neighborhood, he was already outside of the perimeter, I guess. So they didn't find him, and they offered me everything in the world to say who he was, but at the end of the day, I didn't see how me telling on him would get me out of trouble because I was the one that was driving when the cop was injured. So that was at that point I just didn't see that that's his story. That was his free pass that he got that he should have used wisely. And I can tell you, I know that he didn't. It would have been better off for him if he probably would have turned himself in that day. But I didn't have anything to do with it that day. I got him away scot free, but then I ended up taking all of the heat. So I ended up going to jail. Um, my parents ended up taking custody of my son, and then I did get out of the county jail after 3 months. They gave me a PR bond while I did a pre-sentence investigation because they made it seem like I was going to get probation at the time because I had never been in trouble before. And I was a nurse and I had been sober, and you could prove that I could be sober. And I had a whole nother county judge that was on my side. And she's like, yeah, I know her. She has issues. She's worked through them. Like, so I thought that I was going to get probation, but then the PSI came back that no, my lawyer told me it's not a matter of if you're going to prison. It's a matter of how long you're going to prison. And being told that, I freaked out and I went on the run. And now catch me if you can. And it took about 6 months, and then they ended up catching me. They had the U.S. Marshals come, and they arrested me. And then I was sentenced to 3 years in prison, I want to say. 3 or 4 years in prison. I want to say 3. And I ended up doing about 2.5, almost 2 and 9 months. And then I was released to a halfway house. I got out to the halfway house, and right when I was released to the halfway house, I wanted to reunite with my son. But my mom had chose to move to Florida at this point. So she had packed my son up and jumped across country and would not let me interstate compact and go with her. So I was left in Colorado to face my consequences and do my parole without my family. And that was a very hard pill to swallow. And I did not do well with that at all. I almost immediately just linked up with other parolees that were using meth and other substances, and I just clung to them to try to numb myself from the pain of losing. Like the whole time I was in prison, I just kept thinking like I'm going to get out and get back with my son and get back with my family. And I got out, and they had fought me for my rights. Like the day before I got out of prison, I was told that I have lost custody permanently to my son. And they had changed his name and changed it from what I had named him at birth and destroyed the original birth certificate and put their names, my parents' names on it, and named him after them. And
So they were trying to really give him like a whole new beginning completely.
absolutely, that's exactly what my mom said. It wasn't done to me; it was done for him. And she kept saying that, and I kept saying, "That's not how it feels right now. Like that's not how it feels." Um, and it didn't. It took a lot for me to understand that. But they had gone to Florida, and immediately I just started making bad choices and hanging out with the bad people. And lo and behold, I get pregnant again by somebody else that's using methamphetamines. And I didn't really know what to do. I just knew I've always been super religious. I grew up Catholic. I've always known that there's a God. I've always known him as my savior. And I don't believe in abortion. I just feel like if they weren't supposed to be here, I wouldn't be getting pregnant because that's not something that I meant to do. So if I'm ended up pregnant, then they're definitely meant to be here. So we'll figure it out. And the guy that got me pregnant, he ended up going right to prison for hot UAs because he was on parole too. So I never got to experience a pregnancy with him. He never came to a doctor's visit. He wasn't there when I gave birth. I did that on my own. I ended up getting in trouble when I found out I was pregnant for hot UAs. So they didn't put me back in prison, but they put me back into a halfway house. And so that's how I had gotten sober again. Now I'm pregnant, and I kept telling myself, now you're going to do everything right. You're not going to drink. You're not going to do drugs. You're going to make sure that this baby comes out healthy as you can get her. And I did. I got myself super fat. She was super healthy. And I gave birth by myself. His family, since my family wasn't around, my family wasn't in state. They weren't there for me. My brothers were, but my mom was not. And so his adopted mom, my daughter's dad, was adopted. And so his adopted parents were super close there for me. And he would write me from prison and tell me, don't let them in. They're going to steal the baby, just like they stole me from my mom. Like, they're going to steal the baby. Don't let them be a part of it. And I kept telling him, well, you're not here to help me. How do you expect me to be a felon on parole, do my UAs, do all this? I didn't have a car. I didn't have a way to even get to the doctor. Like, I have to pay my own rent. I have to all these obligations, and now I'm going to have to financially pay for a daughter on my own, because here's the thing, like, he's in prison. Even if I go and get child support on him, I'm still not going to get any. Like, that's not how that works out. So so I'm like, and before I start cutting people off for helping me just on what they might do, I might want to make sure that I could do it on my own before I try to cut people out. Like, I'm not going to let my daughter go without just because I'm afraid. Like, that makes no sense. So after my daughter was born, I did rely a lot on my brother to help me with her. And I started drinking again. And my brother put his foot down and was like, I'm not going to be here to help you. I can't. You need to get yourself together. You need to do something right. Like, if parole comes in and just takes you away, what's going to happen? Like, you need to figure this out. And so he left me alone in the apartment, and I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it on my own. I couldn't afford the daycare. I had ended up breaking my ankle. And so now I was on pain pills for my broken ankle. And it was just it was bad. And so my daughter's adopted grandparents, they said, why don't you come move in with me? Bring your daughter. We'll go ahead. You won't have to pay rent. You can use that money to pay off your parole, pay that off, get yourself, you don't have to work all the time anymore. You can work part-time, save up, get you a car, and really get your life back together. And I thought that was an awesome opportunity. I thought that was exactly what I needed in that point in my life. And that was in my daughter's best interest. Like, she would have her own bedroom. I'd have my own bedroom. That was better than what we already had. And then I would have some help too, because being a single mom, it's no joke. And especially my daughter was very colicky. She cried all the time. And when you're just waking up every 2 hours every day and you're the only one doing it, it gets tiresome. And that's one thing about addicts, is once you start getting tired and you start getting fed up, your emotions will get the best of you and you'll just want to escape. And that's kind of what happened. I was drinking to escape and just trying to numb my anger and my frustrations out. And then when I had moved in with them, I think it lasted 13 days before she ended up calling my parole officer and saying, she's drunk. You need to come get her. You need to come arrest her. She's unmanageable. And I wasn't even on BAs. I was on UAs and I had passed all my UAs. So I felt massive betrayal when she had done that. And I didn't really know what was going to happen. But what had happened was my parole officer came and threw me back in prison for 6 month turnaround for drinking. And I thought that was extremely harsh, saying I didn't commit a crime. But I guess I did, because you're not legally allowed to drink when you're on parole. But at that point, social services had then come into my life for my daughter as abandonment, because I had now abandoned my infant child to go to prison for 6 months. So they opened a case, and in Colorado, if you have a social services case and the child is under a year old, you have 1 year to get them out of your life. Otherwise, they take custody of your child forever. So the clock was ticking the day that they made their first contact, and I had to spend 6 months of that every day, 180 days inside of prison. So 180 days later, I'm getting out of prison. I now have no job. I had been sober that whole time, but I have no clothes. I was not allowed to return to the residence that I was living, which was their residence where my daughter was. I had no friends, because I never had friends that would make it a month while I was locked up. My family was still out of state. So I had now lost my son and my daughter and my whole life. They had put another stipulation on me that upon release, I needed to put myself in an inpatient rehab for 2 weeks. I want to say it was something like that. It was called the STIRT program. It was like a 2-week long program. Well, my waiting list for that was 2 months long. So in that 2 months, I was living in a motel. I ended up getting a job, was working, and then all of a sudden they called me, my bed's ready, I need to go into this rehab, even though I hadn't drank or anything for months upon months. Upon going to the rehab, I ended up losing my job. They would not hold my job for me to go to this rehab. So then once I got out of the rehab, I now no longer have the hotel. I have no money to come up with any money for a motel. Nobody's going to help me. I couldn't go back to see my daughter. And at this point, her dad was out of prison. He had finished his consequences, was out in the streets and doing heroin and not living right. But to me, my logic was, he caused all of this. Like, he needs to help me out. Like, you need to help me. Like, I will get her back, but I now only have 3 months. I only had 3 months left to get her back in my life. And I'm a bum. I have no job, no car, no money, nowhere to live. Like, I have to get something together, and I have to do it quick. And I only have 3 months, and the only one that's going to help me is you, sir. So you need to help. And he said that he would help, but he didn't. He only cared about his addiction and his drugs, and misery loves company. And so instead of me, trying to force somebody else to do what I can't do and what they won't do, I ended up just getting high with him. And then my parole officer told me, he was like, you know what? I know you're not doing things right. I'm sending you back to prison for another 6 month turnaround. And once I was told that, I was like, yeah, no, you're not. If I go back to prison for another 6 months turnaround, that means I lose rights to my daughter forever. Like, now you're going to have to catch me. Now I'm not going to just go with you. So I did not turn myself in. I absconded, and that's when my addiction became unmanageable again. At that point, I was drinking. I was doing anything that I can to just try to numb myself of the pain of losing both of my kids. And it took, I want to say, maybe 2 months. And my dad, right before they had said that they were going to send me back to prison, my dad was trying to help me out. He said that he would sell me one of his cars. I could make payments to him. I didn't give him anything down. I took the car. He said if I could come up with the money to go ahead and get my license back, and I could test in the car. And I ended up somehow coming up with the money for 1 month's insurance and the test. And I took the test, got my driver's license back. He gave me the car. So at this point, I'm now living in that car, and with my daughter's dad, trying to drive him around to go work. He's tattooing. And so we're just literally just being degenerates, and not any money that we're making, we're just spending on getting high and not trying to better ourselves. And so then when I went on the run, that was the same type of procedure. And so since we were living in the car, I was getting drunk, and I got pulled over for DUI. And I remember being outside of the car and talking to the cop, and I'm like, this can't be happening to me right now. Like I'm going to go to prison. Like I know I'm going to go to prison because I'm running from prison. And so I ran back to the car because I gave up. I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to run. So I tried to run back to the car to get the car started and leave. And I left the car door open as I ran to it. And the cop chased me and he slipped on something, fell into my car door and broke his leg. And I heard his leg snap right there. And at that point, I was just like, oh my gosh, I just got another assault on the police officer. Like, this is not going to go good at all. And so I had stopped running and I just was yelling at the police officer to get up. He's not hurt. Just shake it off. Just shake it off. Like, you're not hurt. Because I was more worried about myself instead of him. I really was. I did not want to go back to court for another assault on a police officer. But ultimately, that's what happened is I went back to court for assault on a police officer in my second DUI. And I was given 2 more years in prison. Well, it was 2 years in the county jail because I pled it down to a misdemeanor. But then I had to do the remainder of my parole time in prison. So I ended up doing 2 years, 2.5 years. And then I was released again. And I was released. I was supposed to do DUI probation. And I wish I could say that like I got out after that time and was like, all right, I'm going to be sober. And I wish I could say I was motivated. But at this point now I've been out after being incarcerated for quite a few years of my life. And I have nothing to show. I want to say I was almost 30 years old. And so I didn't make it sober through that night. I had $5 in my pocket and I went and got a beer with it before I even made it to my friend's house where I was asking if I could stay there. And the friend that I ended up staying with, she was a hoarder, and that was not a very healthy house or an environment for me. She had a younger daughter that was in addiction and getting all of her neighborhood street friends. When I walked into that house, there was more drugs in that house than there was in the jail that I came from. And it was a whole bunch of kids doing them. And I was trying to talk to my friend like, hey, you have to take these drugs away from these kids. And at this point, she's doing the drugs with them. And she's like, I can't take them away from them. They're the ones that are giving it to me. Like, I didn't give it to them. They gave it to me. And I just fell right into the trap and was doing them with her. And then it was only a matter of time. And I ended up getting a probation violation and getting the probation revocated. And I had to go back to jail for 6 months. So I went back to jail. And when I had gotten out, there was a lot of drunken moments while I was staying in the hoarder's house and a lot of fights with the drugged out teenagers. And one of those times, there was 2 guys that were fighting. I got involved into it. One of the guys was seriously hurt. And it took a good year for it to catch up to me. And then all of a sudden it caught up and I got felony assault for that incident. And they gave me probation for it. And so I was supposed to be doing everything for the probation. I got mental health probation. But at this point, I was so overdoing UAs and I was so overdoing classes and things. I just felt like everything was so forced upon me. I tried to do it. It was a 5-year probation deal. And I think I did it for 4 years. And then I met another guy and he was just doing whatever he wanted. And so then therefore I no longer wanted to do the classes and do the UAs and do the groups and meet with my therapist. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what this guy was doing. And I was smoking meth and drinking every day and doing whatever he wanted. So I fell into the trap of just going with him. And it's fine. We just won't put anything in my name. We're just going to put everything in your name. You don't have to work. I'll work and I'll just pay for everything. And if everything's under your name, nobody knows where I am. You protect me. It will work out just fine. But the way that relationship went was very toxic and he did not protect me at all. Instead, anytime I didn't do what he wanted, he would decide that he's going to call the police. and he's going to have me arrested. And so there was a few times that he had me arrested for domestic violence. And so then they ended up terminating my probation, and they're going to turn it over to prison. And now I'm going to go to prison for this fight that happened years ago. That, I mean, I'll take accountability for my actions. I did know better, but at the same time, I didn't want to go to prison over this now after this point in my life. Um, but that ended up happening. And so I ran from the prison after they told me I was going to prison. They were violating my probation. And then I just started hanging out with people that I knew from prison. And it got bad. Like, I got a hold of another gun and thought that I was defending myself and got into a fight. The police came and I was arrested again for attempted murder, plus all of the warrants that I had. So then I was sent back to state prison for the fourth time as an adult. And at that time, I literally cried out to God and just said, I don't want to do this anymore. This has just been too rough. I don't want to. And that time when I went to prison, they put me in the therapeutic community where I needed to live around people and admit that I'm an addict and actively work on how I'm going to fix myself every day. And I stayed there for over a year. It was a year-long program, but after I had completed it, I volunteered to stay there. They were supposed to, everybody usually gets parole after they complete it. I did not. And so I didn't want to go back into general population after I had learned these skills because I felt so strong in my sobriety and so strong in my faith. And at this point, my mom had moved back to Colorado from Florida. So now, this time when I get released, I'm going to be released to my son. I lost the rights to my daughter. She was adopted by her adopted family, and they will not let me speak to her. I have tried several times, but now I get a chance to, and I'm not going to get rights back to my son. I was very realistic with it, but I'm going to be able to get out and show him that, like, addiction can ruin your life, but you can also overcome it. And so that was my main goal about getting out of prison, that I was going to show him. And he started to have issues with his own addiction. He was getting into fights at school. He was smoking weed. He was drinking. And he was always very open and honest with me about it. And I had this mentality where I was like, as long as you just leave it at that level, like as long as you don't, start going and doing meth or cocaine or fentanyl or things like that, then I don't care. Smoke your weed, do all of this. And I had forgot that as addicts, we don't ever keep our addiction at a certain level. Like, it just grows. It grows. If we had that type of control, we wouldn't be addicts. And so my son's addictions grew very fast, and it was very scary. And I got out of prison and he was right there waiting, and I got super close with him. And anything he was doing, I wanted to do. He's playing football, I want to play football. He's going out on dates, I want to go on the dates with him. Like, I was his little sidekick. I was like his best friend.
Yeah, I
And
don't know if any boy wants their mom going on the dates with them, but you're trying to make up for lost time, definitely, right?
he did. But honestly, like, that was the way that I could get him to do anything with me. Is he's like, well, can my girlfriend come? Absolutely, your girlfriend can come. Yeah. And I'll help you buy her flowers. I'll put you up on game. Like, I'll get this little girl to love you. And he was a great kid. And unfortunately, right when I got off parole, COVID had hit, and my son was starting to have more issues with my parents being locked in the house, and he was doing drugs, and my parents they thought that it was just weed, but his girlfriend had ended up telling me, I thought he was doing cocaine just because I noticed the behavior change in him. Like, he didn't want to come around me anymore. Now I can no longer get him to come out to eat with me. Like, I get what you're saying. Nobody wants their mom on their dates, but at the beginning he didn't mind. And then all of a sudden it was, nah, don't come around. Nope, I don't want to see you. And I'm trying to buy him concert tickets and take him to concerts, and he doesn't want to go. Like, who doesn't want to go to a concert? Like, when you're 16, what are you talking about? And before, he was all about coming to my house and staying at my house with his friends and having little sleepovers. Now all of a sudden he doesn't want to come to my house anymore. And like there was issues when he did come to my house where he had gotten drunk with his friends, and I called my dad, my stepdad, and was like, you need to come get them. Like they're breaking my boundaries. And my stepdad had even said, he was like, I can't be having this. Like, I'm scared that he's going to get you in trouble at this point. And I can see where he came from. And then I got scared too. And I was like, now I'm scared. Like, cause yeah, boys always trip me up, and I love my son. Like he'll trip me up. And so I kind of like distanced myself a little bit, but then when I tried to, now the text messaging stopped, the phone calls stopped, everything stopped. And I'm like, no, something's more is going on in this situation. And his girlfriend told me that he was using drugs. And I was like, all right, I need you to go into his room, and I need you to search his room, and I need you to tell me what you see so I know what drugs he's doing. And she ended up finding foil and a lighter, and she showed me, and it's fentanyl. It was fentanyl, and I've never done fentanyl, and I don't know much about it, but I just know that this is serious, and I need to get him help, and I need to get him help now. And so the hardest part was trying to convince my family that we need to help him, because they've tried so many times to help me in my addiction, and I just kicked back, and it just never worked. We looked into inpatient places for him to go. I think one of them was in Utah, but they had told us that they will not accept him into the inpatient programs unless he wants to go. If he doesn't want to be there, they're not going to accept him in there. And he did not want to go. He said that he'll do something outpatient, but he's not going to do anything inpatient. And I tried to have long talks with him about my addiction and how important it is that if you don't want to tell me what you're going through, that's fine, but you need to find somebody and tell it to somebody, because secrets keep you sick. And like, you need to be able to talk about it, because once you talk about your secrets, then they won't keep you sick, and they won't hold you down anymore, because it's the things that I've kept inside that's made me want to drink or made me want to numb myself, because I didn't have the power or the strength to be able to just say it. And if you say it out loud, it loses all of that hold against you. And so he ended up going, and he went into he went into an outpatient rehab and was doing intensive outpatient work. And after his third session, he overdosed and died in my mom's house.
I'm so
And
sorry to hear.
I appreciate your condolences. That was probably the rudest awakening I had ever had. Burying him, holding his funeral, having all of these 16-year-old kids just see what addiction will do to you and what it will do to your family. It made me really hate drugs with a passion. And I wish I could say that was the moment where I was done. But that opened up a whole nother pain of where I realized that I need to learn how to grieve, and I need to learn how to take losses in life. Like, sometimes things come and you have to just cry it out, and you have to just overcome it. There's things that are going to hurt in this life. And that was a heartbreaking one. And I was drinking really bad. And then I just remember crying out to God. And I realized, the drinking's not going to take the pain away. I need to honestly get some help for myself. And I need to learn how to grieve. And I need to learn how to overcome this. Or I'm going to be the next one in the family to die. And I didn't want my son's memory to be what kills me. I wanted it to be what made me stronger. I wanted not that. I want to live for the both of us now. I don't want addiction to take us both down. And I want to be able to have the answers that I should have given him, because I don't. And I still don't. But that's why I'm doing things like this podcast now, is because hopefully my story shows somebody else that you can keep going, and there's a reason to keep going. Like, there's nothing that's too hard where you should give up and throw in the towel, because you're worth it. And my son's story is tragic, but he was a great kid, and he gave me the best 16 years of my life. And it just shows how powerful that addiction can be, and how
painful choices and consequences are for momentary relief. Like, you don't ever really need to escape pain if it's going to cause that much worse. Like, just deal with it in the moment. So, I mean, I guess that's my story. And now I
I
am.
appreciate you telling me that. That's great. I mean, you know, I hope this really reaches other people because a lot of other people might see that this is something that they're going through, and it's something that they can get help with, right? And it's something that maybe they can see. Oh, hey, that's how I felt, and this person is doing so well, and this is something that I can do. And how long have you been
Absolutely.
clean now since you started doing all this?
So it's been 9 months and 3 days since I've had a drink or smoked anything. It's been even longer since I've done any illegal substances or anything like that. I do an awful lot of therapy. I work a lot with my 12-step programs. I get people that text me on a daily basis all over the nation and give me my inspiration and hope and strength to just continue on. I'll have people all over that will just call and check in. Just, hey, check in time. How are you doing? What's going on? But even more importantly, like, I did go and put myself in a sober living home and was there for 6 months and became the house manager there. So I learned how to help people get to where I'm at, but I also made some very strong connections in the community. People that I can and do call. And I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. I've had a bad day. Or I'll call them when it's a good day. Hey, I'm having a good day. Um, I did put myself into therapy, so I still constantly do therapy. It's not so much a relapse prevention, it's more mental health, grief and loss, things like that, so that I can, because I do have borderline personality disorder. So I'm very impulsive and I make poor choices. And so I'm learning, instead of medicating myself and using more drugs to try to change my behavior, I'm using therapy and I'm using classes to try to teach myself how to change the thought processes and the behaviors. And I've taken so many classes in my life. Like, if I could give any suggestion to somebody, it's, if a class doesn't work, don't give up on therapy. Go find another class. There's always going to be some things that do work and a lot of things that don't. So I just suggest you just try them and try them all. You had no problem trying every drug to try to numb the pain, so you might as well try every class to numb the pain, you know?
That is great advice. No, thank you so much for sharing your story. And that was a lot. You've gone through so many things. I think this will reach a lot of people who will say, you know, maybe they haven't gone through everything that you've gone through, but they have at least gone through one or two of the things where they said, "Hey, I went through that too, and I reacted the same way, and this person is now getting help, and maybe I need to get help now." So, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate your time and your ability to go through the details and give everybody hope and especially at the very end. Usually, I ask, "What's some advice that you would give to someone who's going through addiction right now?" Perfect. How you already explained it. Get the therapy, get the help, go through it. That's exactly what a lot of people need to hear and to get them through what they're going through. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And again, appreciate your time. And I'm friends with Holly on Facebook. So if you're friends with me on Facebook and you're watching this, hit her up, ask her questions and reach out to her because she might be able to give you some advice for something that you might need. And we appreciate your time again, Holly. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys for the next one.